Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Thanks for joining today. The session today we'll be covering is over the November store release for workplace service delivery. So going right into this today. I'd like to start off by showing the safe harbor because in some occasions we may allude to some forward-looking statements, and I just want to make sure that we are not committing to any of these dates or features in any way. Before getting started, I just want to make sure that everyone is up to date and can follow along all the events that happen live on ServiceNow. So to be able to access any future events, you can either take a capture of this QR code or go ahead and look at the community page where you'll be able to register for the upcoming events. So before starting, a few housekeeping rules. So please remain on mute throughout the whole session. The plan is to go over the different items for this release. Please go ahead and add any questions you may have during the presentation into the Q&A section. We do have a Q&A planned for the end of this session where we'll go through all those questions. Feel free in that Q&A to go ahead and introduce yourself. We do find it interesting to understand who you are and try and respond to the question you have the best way possible. Just as a reminder, this session is being recorded and will be posted later on to our community page for anyone that would like to view it if they have not seen it, or to be able to review it throughout the content. And finally, at the end of this session, you'll be prompted to fill out a survey. This usually helps us to gather feedback and understand what could be improved for our next sessions. So having said that, let's look into the agenda of what we'll be actually covering today. So firstly, we'll start off with the space optimization. A new application that was released in November is scenario planning. We'll then be going into reservation management and the enhancements that have been made, followed by indoor mapping, some Map Studio enhancements and improvements. And finally, we'll be looking at the controlled go-to-market that has been released that is around health and safety, before showing you where to find the resources on some of these topics and a Q&A session at the end. So today, I will not be the only presenter on this session. I have quite a few colleagues here that will be joining me to present different topics. So myself, I'm Elizabeth. I'm part of the Workplace Service Delivery Outbound Product Management team. And I'm joined today by David, who's part of our Solution Consultant team, who will be running you over a demo of scenario planning, followed by Gaurav, which will go giving you a deep dive into reservation management. He's part of the Product Success team. And he is joined by Alexandre and Caroline, who are also part of the Product Success team. We also have Alison, who will be facilitating the Q&A session, who is part of the Outbound Product Management also. Having said that, let's go ahead and start with a quick poll. So just for us to understand, Workplace Service Delivery is a store application. We release quarterly, so this means we release 4 times a year. And we'd just like to understand and get to know which release are you currently on? Are you still on February? Have you moved and been able to benefit from some of the items that were released in May, in August? Or are you already on the November release that was released about a month ago? Or are you someone that is not sure, as you do not deal with these updates on the platform? So I can see quite a few response coming in. I see a couple of you have already started moving on to November. We'd be interested to understand if you are using some of the new features, or if you're still in a development phase on understanding what has come out. I also see that most of the people that have responded are on August, so that's great to hear that they're not on the latest version. Totally understandable, it only came out a month ago, but you are following as we go ahead with the release. Perfect. So I'll end this poll. That was great sharing this information. If you want to share anything more on this, you can definitely go ahead and add anything into the Q&A section. Oh. Moving on. So we'll start with scenario planning today, and David from our Solution Consultant team, as I mentioned, will go over this new application. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining today. My name is David Karish. I'm going to walk you through our new scenario planning application within Workplace Service Delivery that we are very, very excited about. Just a quick slide, and then I'm going to do a demonstration for you. The idea of scenario planning is to ultimately help you identify space enhancement opportunities. That means how the various floors, the spaces within those floors, within those buildings are all situated, your ability to visualize the changes, create scenarios on how different areas might look. If you were to move, for example, one department to a different area or a different floor, or change where people are sitting. And then, of course, deploy those instances, those scenarios that you create. We're going to give you the opportunity to publish them, review them, make decisions on them, and then effectively deploy those instances, which then will create cases for you to follow up on and permanently make those changes within your ServiceNow system. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. Hopefully this works for everyone. Elizabeth, can you see my space screen?
Exactly, perfect.
Wonderful. So with every application, we have to have a foundation. We have to have a place to start. And with scenario planning, we're starting with our room record. So if you're familiar with WSD, you know that all information regarding your spaces, regardless of what those spaces are all held in the room record. So that's what you're looking at here is an example room record that I have within my demonstration instance. On the left-hand side, we have the standard name, the region, site, campus, everything that you would expect that would go into getting down to that room level. And then on the right-hand side, we have some additional features that we actually released in one of our earlier releases around space planning specifically. So we built this in for you to be able to start tracking things like the status of that space, whether it's temporary, whether it's under construction, whether it's active, start dates, end dates, and then of course, things like the space type and the assignment type, as well as department and cost center. Now, these are important because the information that we're going to be pulling and that I'm going to be showing you here within the scenario planner is coming directly from the room records. Specifically, what we're going to see is how we can take information like the space type and the assignment type, like flexible or permanent, as well as, if I scroll down, the department as well as the cost center. So on this particular record, we have a cost center as customer service and a department as compliance. So we're going to be pulling all of this information in for you to be able to utilize within that scenario planner. Okay, so that's our foundation. Let's go ahead and move over to the scenario planner itself. And we have built it into the workspaces. So if you're familiar with these, you're probably already using these dashboards in some form or fashion. It's going to be located under Workplace Central. That's where you would find it once you have it installed. And the primary dashboard is going to show you things like all of your scenarios, your draft scenarios, as well as your published scenarios. It will also show you all of your specific buildings, the information that's being pulled from those records that we just talked about, so you could feasibly view those as well. The difference between draft and published scenarios is that when it's in a draft, and keep in mind, you can create as many of these as you want. So as time goes on, your organization, your facilities, your buildings evolve. You can create multiple different scenarios to see how different things might look. You can edit those in a draft. And then when you publish those scenarios, that's effectively saving that draft, but then you have the ability to share that out for your colleagues to review, potentially approve or recommend changes to. And then of course, we also have deploy, which we'll see here in a moment, that will then create those cases for your people to go and make those physical changes. So let's click into one of the existing scenarios that I have. I'm going to look at building a demo campus. I already have it open here for us. And the first thing that you're going to see is stack plan. So if you look up on the top left-hand corner there, I've got details. That's simply the name of your scenario and the building that you chose, the stack plan, the floor map, and then our execution plan. I'm going to move through these from left to right. The stack plan is going to give you a very good visual view of everything that you have going on that individual floor within that individual building. So as you can see here, I have 8 different floors that we're looking at. Each of those floors is separated by cost center and department, at least in this view. And you can see how many spaces I have assigned by department. So if you look on the top left there, I have knowledge management, below that purchasing, below that probably information management or information systems. Each of those has a number allocated. These are the number of spaces that you would have assigned to that. And again, that information is being pulled directly from the room record that we looked at. Very quickly, if you look over on the right-hand side, we're giving you some additional details about those spaces. So I'm in scenario mode right now. We're going to see a couple of examples of how you can change that view. But with scenario mode, I can edit this information. But right now, I'm looking at a single building with all the different floors. So I'm looking at things like the full capacity ratio, if I have people assigned to those spaces within those departments, within those floors. We're also looking at, like unassigned space. So you can see whether or not people are actually sitting there in a permanent or flexible type scenario. And then, of course, just the general space count. So as we're pulling that information in, we can see how many spaces you have in total, as well as the capacity. And then, as I mentioned before, we're currently looking at department and cost center. So I have a kind of a color key down there on the bottom right-hand corner. So I've got configuration, employee services, all of them are color coded with the number of spaces that are included within each. Now, the nice thing about the scenario planner in the stack plan view is that you don't have to look at it in terms of just department or cost center. We can actually allow you to look at it a couple of different ways. So you can also see it by space type, as we mentioned when we pull that from the room record. So the space type is going to be, what kind of space is that? Is it a desk? Is it a room? Is it miscellaneous? Is it a bathroom? It could be any kind of a space, and you're going to be able to pull and see that information in there. We're also going to allow you to see things like the space status. This one, I think, is important because if you start working with that, the space management information that was on that room record, and you start creating spaces that are not just active, but if you're thinking about making moves, you change that space record to maybe temporary if you think that's going to be moved from one place to another, or if you've just got too many spaces or too many let's just call it workstations, for example, on a single floor, you could mark those as retired, so you know exactly how many you're thinking about starting to retire prior to actually making those moves. So you do have a few different ways to view that information. We've also made it very easy for you to make changes from the stack planner. So in a very simple drag and drop format, you can review this information. You can then select these particular areas by department, and then you can click on it, and then you can move it around. So if I had needed to, I could take human resources from floor 7. I can see that there's 26 desks within human resources, and maybe on floor 5, I've got 236 unallocated spaces. So I know there's room down there. I can drag that over. I can move it down there. It automatically adjusts the unallocated spaces for me, and then changes that stacked view on floor 5. So I can move that anywhere I want within those floors within that building. And then alternatively, if you don't quite know where those spaces need to go, at least not initially, if you're just starting to envision how you might lay out different floors, we're also giving you a clipboard. This would be like a hold status, for example. So I could grab one of these, and instead of putting it on a floor, I can just put it up here and leave it up there until I'm ready to start really making changes and move things around to get it to the way that I want it. So making changes within the stack planner with the drag and drop capability is very easy. And then you do have the ability to see the various views, and then the additional statistical information that we saw there on the right-hand side as well. Moving forward, we're also going to give you a floor map. And the floor map is going to be tied to the new indoor mapping that we released some time back. So if you're not already using it, highly recommend that you do. The same floor maps that you're importing and configuring within the map studio within Workplace Service Delivery are the same maps that you're going to be seeing here in the scenario planner. And what we've done now is we've moved to an individual floor. So instead of looking at a single building with 8 different floors, I'm drilling down to whatever floor that I so choose. Now, in this instance, I'm on floor 2, but I could look at 5 different floors if I had the maps for those. Floor 2 has a lot of workstations for me, so that's the one that we're going to look at. And the nice thing about this is, just as we were looking at the floor, the stack plan, you can see those same departmental color coding options that we created in there, but you're looking at it on the map. So for example, you can see that I have different colors in here. Each of them is representing different departments. So I could select any of these particular desks with that color code, and then I can see that information. So I can see that this department is configuration management. I can also see assigned profiles. So if you have permanent desk assignment within your organization, you can see exactly who's sitting there. You can also see what department they're from. This is very useful when not only breaking down what department they're sitting in, but also maybe whether or not they're an internal employee or potentially a contractor. I've heard that. So you could see all of that information just by clicking on those spaces. We're also giving you the ability to make changes directly from the map. So let's slide a little bit over here to the left and I'll zoom in again. Let's see if we can find a desk that doesn't have someone assigned to it. How about 0592? I can again click on that desk. It will populate that information. It looks like there might be some people in there. So let's try a different desk. 0593 doesn't have anybody assigned to it, but I want to put somebody in there because it's already assigned to the configuration management department. So let's go ahead and assign an individual to that space. That's incredibly simple as well. So in this actions drop down, we're going to allow you to change the allocation, which might be the department cost center, for example, user assignment, which is the individual user, and we're going to do that right now, or the type of desk it is. So that'd be the assignment type. Is it a flexible desk? Is it a permanent desk? So we're going to choose user assignment, and really it's kind of self-service. It just walks you through what you need to add. You simply choose the drop downs. Let's put Fonda Dugans in there. It automatically applies that. And then when I save it, Fonda is now assigned to that desk. And what will happen is a case will be created, which we're going to look at here in just a moment, that will allow the moves people within your facilities to go out and actually make that change. Now, in addition to this, if we slide over one more, you can see that while I have people assigned in these areas, they're clearly not allocated. They don't have a department set, but if everybody is assigned to a desk, odds are they belong somewhere. They belong to a team, they belong to a department. What we can do is allow you to select all of these spaces at once. So if I select shift and then I drag it all the way around these spaces here, I can grab them all at once without doing one at a time. And then I can come right back over here and create that same action, except this time I want to do it as an allocation. So I want to change the allocation of those spaces. I want to add an allocation because I know it doesn't have one. And then let's just go ahead and make them product. Same process. Go ahead and apply that. And you see immediately it added product to those spaces and automatically changed those colors. So now I know what department is at those that location within those workstations. And then again, if I click on that, I can also see exactly who is sitting there. So it does provide a very good view of all of the spaces you have based on the CAD files that you imported with Map Studio. It will show you what spaces are flexible, unassigned, assigned, who's sitting there, and feasibly, what department or team they are also associated with. Now, finally, once you create all of these changes, we do also have the execution plan. So I'm just going to discard those changes and I'm going to move over to the execution plan. And what the execution plan is doing is it's tracking all of those changes for you. So regardless of what you've done, if it's an individual move, if it's a group reallocation, similar to what we just saw, or if you move multiple people, we're going to be tracking all of those changes. And you're going to see all of those in the execution plan within this particular scenario. And what you would do at this point, once you have approved it, once you've had additional eyes on it, if it's exactly where you want it to be, you can then publish that. You can then from there deploy that. So at deploy, this is when we start creating those cases. And I would simply select this button and it's going to automatically generate those moves cases within the underlying technology of ServiceNow. We can notify all the appropriate people within facilities or moves management. And then they will take the reins, so to speak, in a holiday fashion and make those changes for you and make those changes permanent. And then one last piece I'll show you, and I'll give it back to Alyssa, is when you do create those, this is what that might look like. So I have a dashboard that I've created. I called it Active Scenario Plan Cases. And here are two examples you can see of what that might look like when you do deploy those scenarios. So I can see I have a workplace allocation change service case that was automatically created for me. That's under the W case table. And then the workplace user assignment move. So this was a similar example to when I added someone to a desk, and that's a W move case there. And this, just to give you an idea of what that looks like when you do open it up, it is a standard case form that you may already be familiar with. So there's not much of a learning curve there. The additional details will be there. And then if you look on the right-hand side, we're also going to give you that scenario plan information. So you can see that this change came directly from the space analysis in February. So that is it. Elizabeth, I'm going to go ahead and give it back to you.
Thank you very much, David. That was very interesting, and I hope a lot of people found a lot of insightful items in there and could think of having this new application within their organization. So, if any requests for additional information, please make sure to reach out to any of us. We can make sure to point you in the right direction to get more information on that. So, I'll go ahead and share my screen again, and we'll continue the presentation. So next, we'll be having the reservation management. Gaurav from the product success team will now run everyone through the new enhancements and features that have been released here for November. Go ahead, Gaurav.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I will start off with sharing my screen.
Yep, go ahead.
Perfect. Can you all see my browser?
Yep, we can.
So the first new major feature that I will cover is around auto-resolve recurring conflicts. So if you have worked with recurring reservations in the WSD reservation application in the past, you might have noticed that whenever we try to make a recurring reservation, the system checks for availability of the first occurrence, and based on that, it presents the availability option. It might happen that one of the occurrences of the recurring series is conflicted, and previously there was a manual step that was needed. So when the user was notified that there is a conflict in one of your occurrences, and the user was expected to go in and resolve that conflict themselves. So starting the November release, we have an option to automatically resolve these conflicts for users. So what WSD will do is it will look for spaces that are within the spaces that are close to the desk that you have reserved, or close to the room that you have reserved, or within the same floors. So there is additional logic on the product documentation that will be followed in terms of what priority order will be taken for the auto assigning thing. But ServiceNow will try to resolve that conflict for the user and let the user know that there was a conflict and you have been auto assigned a new space for that particular conflict. So I won't go into recreating that scenario, given it does take some steps of creating a conflicting resolution and reoccurring resolution. But at the same time, I have created a conflicting resolution to see what it looks like. So over here, Able Tutor has a reservation on 12/27 at 7:30 to 12:30 in room 1201. When I came to my own record, I tried to make a recurring reservation for that entire week, and Able has a reservation on Tuesday. So for that particular day, what ServiceNow did is it assigned a new space instead. So if you see over here, all of the rest of my reservations in the series are for desk 1201, 0201. Over here, it's 0207 because the system determined that that was the place that is equivalent or like a suitable substitution for the space that I tried to reserve, and a new space was assigned. This new space assignment is, of course, noted in the notification that is sent out to end users as well. So they will be aware that they have been assigned a new space. And there's when the reservation is made, there's a message that shows up over here that there was a conflict and the conflict has been resolved. So this is the feature around auto resolve recurring reservations, and this can be turned on and off at a reservable module level. So it's you can decide whether or not you want to turn on the auto resolve conflict for certain reservable modules. So that was the first major feature that was out in the November release. The other major feature is allow multiple buildings reservation. So you might have noticed that we already had an ability to make reservations for multiple spaces in the past, but all of those spaces needed to be within the same building. Starting this release, you can make within a single transaction, you can make reservations for multiple spaces, and now they can be across multiple buildings. Once again, it is controlled through the reservable module level. If you look over here, and you can optionally check this flag on or off. A detail that I would like to add is these two new configurations or these two new checkboxes. If you're updating from like a previous version, they may not be visible on this form view. So you might have to change the form view to add these two checkboxes in case any changes have been made to the form view. So coming back to, I'll come here and make that reservation. So over here, I have multi-building reservation turned on at the meeting rooms module. So my primary building over here is in California. So we will refer to the time zone. So that is the primary building. So we will select the time, start time and end time in terms of that building. Now I optionally have an option of adding additional buildings in here. So I'll add one building in Amsterdam. I don't need to choose the time because it is at the same time, 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific. So I hit search. So now I have an option to pick a room from my primary building, in this case, California campus. I'll add the room Aspen. And I can optionally choose whether I want to add any building from the Amsterdam campus. So if I click next over here, I'll get a warning that I didn't choose anything from the Amsterdam building. So I'll go ahead and add something from the Amsterdam building, and I will click next. So over here, I have two different rooms from across two buildings over here. And if you look at the total capacity, the capacity is 16 plus 4. So that's the total capacity. I will add a few attendees to this. Reservation, and I will submit the reservation. So you might be wondering what is the use for this feature. So in the example that I use, so let's say you have an all hands and which occurs at the same time, and it is across different buildings. So you can reserve all those rooms in one go directly. At the same time, one of the things that I find it useful for is avoiding time zone conversions. So let's say if the meeting was at the same moment. So as you can see over here, we reserved it for 8:30 to 9:30 Pacific. But over here, it automatically did the time zone conversions for me. And the time is reflected in terms of the time in Amsterdam. An additional thing that we can do over here is we can assign who is going to which room. So Abel, let's say he is going to Aspen, and we can assign Abraham to Dublin, let's say. So this way it ties into the capacity, and this once again is optional, but in case you wanted to control the capacity and who goes into which room, this ability is available as well. And once again, the notifications and everything is as you'd expect. So the users are sent the right information as to where the reservation is and where they're assigned to. So this was the multi-building reservation experience. So I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Gaurav, for going over those two brand new features, part of the November release. I hope everyone's excited for those, and will find those use cases interesting and match with the use cases they currently see in their organizations. So now moving on to indoor mapping and Map Studio enhancements. Let Alexandre from the product success team run us through these new enhancements.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. So Workplace Indoor Mapping is our native indoor mapping solution within WSD. And today we will talk about Map Studio, that is part of the plugin, and also where you will bring your digital map to life, and then use it for reservation purposes, space management, as David showed, workplace issue, or even to have direction from point A to point B. Using a previously imported CAD files configuration can save a lot of time, and that's new in November. So you will first import your first file to the system, and then if your remaining files have the same naming convention, it will be auto-filled based on the last file you imported. So it's much more simple to import multiple files, and you can just create one floor, drag and drop your file, going to the next one, and then going back to the configuration. Then we have the ability to copy direction from one floor to another. So this feature is pretty much straightforward, but you can, as I mentioned, copy direction drafts, but also connectors from one floor to another. On my side, I'm mainly using this feature to copy my connectors, just to make sure that they will be at the same position. And so this is one of the many tips and tricks I can give you. But also, if you want to create everything manually and position your connectors yourself, you now have the possibility to show where your connectors will be on every floors. Then we have the map preview. So before, you had to go to the WSD portal or the employee center to test out your map. And now you can directly do it in Map Studio to make sure that you haven't missed any studio steps before linking your map to WSD and start your reservation or use it in the location directory. So we also changed how you configure your view. Before, you had to select all the specific content you wanted to see on your map, and now you have pre-filled options, such as displaying all the contents. So all existing layers, layer types, place types, etc., will go through your configuration. And you also have the possibility to copy your view from another existing campus you already configured. So thanks to that, you can have the same color coding all over your campuses, and it will save you a lot of time. And also, you of course still have the option to select what you want to add to your view, as you had before the November release, by clicking on specific contents. So shortcuts, and you can trust me, this feature is gold when it comes to manual edition and creation. I won't go into details on that enhancement because our lovely slide explains pretty much everything. But being able to create and edit while doing less clicks in Map Studio will definitely reduce the time you spend on manual creations. So closing polylines. This is the huge upgrade we did on Map Studio. So for people who are familiar with AutoCAD imports, we originally asked in our guidelines to make sure that all room, desks, etc. are enclosed. And now, thanks to that feature, you still need to have enclosed spaces for Map Studio to display your room correctly. But now Indoor Mapping Studio will help you enclose as well. So you still need to worry, as I mentioned, about enclosing everything, but you now have an extra help in the studio by configuring it under your info mapping properties.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alex, for running us through some of those enhancements to Map Studio. I want to make sure that if you are starting to use indoor mapping and creating your floor plans, that you do check out the community site. A lot of information is posted out of there, and you'll be able to find some step-by-step guides of how to configure your maps, but also depending on the version of the plugin that you're currently on, different guides are out there and available for you for that first setup. So now moving on to health and safety, I'd like to present Caroline from the product success team, who is going to run us through this new application.
Hello, everybody. Our new health and safety incident management application is new for our November release under a controlled go-to-market package. So if you are interested in obtaining this capability, please reach out to your account teams because it is not yet publicly available, but they can help you get this if it's something that you're interested in. So what this offers is, we can go back to the first slide. What this offers is the ability for employees now to report either an incident, meaning something that has happened relating to health and safety, for example, an injury, or an observation. So something from a preventative perspective, such as exposed wiring cables and things like that to help foster a community of safety. This is available in the Employee Center under a new health and safety category. And then you'll see the two record producers, which is report health and safety incident, as well as report health and safety observation. And of course, these are configurable, so you can add specific questions or anything that might be specific to your needs. All right, so that's from the employee persona. On the other side, we have a lot of exciting capabilities for your health and safety agents to work on. So they get a new workspace. It's called Health and Safety Workspace, where they will get all of the submitted incidents and observations. They can then monitor them, review them, and if needed, they can log an injury and illness report. So that's what you see in the screenshot at the bottom. That's where they can report if somebody was injured or fell ill. They even have a diagram where they can report where the injury occurred, what caused the injury, if the employee needed to be hospitalized, as well as any other details relating to the illness or injury resulting from the submitted incident. Additionally, if an investigation is required, there is a new workbench that is created where they can go and focus on the investigation, which allows them to document witnesses, actions, people involved, and as well as root cause analysis. So it gives your health and safety agents all of the tools they need to really focus in and provide a safe workplace for your employees. So again, this is something that is not available publicly. If you are interested, please reach out to your account teams. We also have a dedicated webinar that was done that covers this topic in greater detail, and that is something that is available on our next slide through our resources.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Caroline, for going over that briefly. So as Caroline mentioned, we did have a webinar a couple of weeks ago that went over the full demo of health and safety. So you can go and check that out. The link will be provided with the recording, and it's also available on community. So I could not mention enough that community is the place to be to get all the updates and understand what has been released in November. So we had this webinar, but you could also find any information on what is new in November directly on the community, but also the technical doc site will be able to have all the information out there for you. So please make sure that if you have any questions, go ahead and put that in the chat. I think we can now move on to the Q&A section, and the team can definitely come on and help answer some of those questions if you do have any. So please feel free to send out any questions, and we'd be happy to help respond to those.
Yes, so we have been monitoring the chat throughout, and shout out to our audience. We've had a lot of activity, a lot of really good questions come through, so that's always exciting to see. I know when David was going through scenario planning, we had a couple of questions that came up around how you can view scenario plans and how those allocations work, but I think as we got deeper into the demo, everyone saw that live and those questions are addressed. There was another good question that came up though, regarding scenario planning and that floor map view and how that works and how that kind of interacts with your CAD file. How do you get that into the platform? And I gave kind of a written answer there, but I want to take a pause and talk about that for a moment. And the reason I want to do that is because this is actually some really exciting news. So this May, Workplace Service Delivery launched a new application called Workplace Indoor Mapping. And with that, we have something really neat called Map Studio. And it's basically an experience for you as a customer to be able to import files to create those mapping experiences. And what we demoed today via David is that kind of experience as it relates to scenario plans. However, there are also mapping experiences that we didn't talk through today for your employees. So just kind of wanted to connect the dots of how we actually have that floor plan visual in the context of scenarios. One of the other questions that I think would be good for us to talk about, we got a question on spaces versus rooms and kind of the location hierarchy of workplace service delivery. And again, we provided kind of a written answer for that one, but I think this is a good one to discuss live. And I'm going to invite Gaurav back to the conversation to add a bit more detail on that.
Yeah, for sure. So just some technical details going through the chat. So spaces and rooms, as you already might know, are two different tables in the hierarchy, but at the same time, room is extended from space, right? So for all intents and purposes, every room is a space. So you can continue using space. So there is, functionally speaking, there is no real need to use the room record if you don't want to, because whenever records are created through indoor mapping, it creates space records itself and not room records. Earlier on, there was a dependency on the room record in terms of the email field being there for the Outlook sync to work properly. But starting, I think it was in the August release, the space records have a capability of being able to sync with the Outlook as well. So for all intents and purposes, you can continue using just the space records and delineate rooms by using the space type field. Does that help answer your question, Peter?
Our attendees can't come off mute, but we'll wait and see if we can get feedback from Peter in the chat to make sure that helps.
Yeah.
It looks like we got another new question in the context of, again, scenario planning and the visibility of reservation data. So this is a very good question. And I would say just more broadly from a perspective of what does workplace service delivery help you do and what visibility do you have to this? I'm sure many of you are aware we have a reservation management application, and with that we have a lot of visibility into what spaces and entities are reserved by your employees, and so that can of course be viewed within workplace service delivery. There is a question on how that ties into scenario planning today, and really the question is, or the answer is that out of the box we're really looking at those allocations and how space is assigned more permanently. However, that question is a good one, and I think it's something that we can keep talking about in the context of our roadmap and how we continue to provide that visibility for scenario planning. It looks like we're caught up for now. We'll give it a couple more seconds to see if more questions or comments come in from the audience. I'll also open it back up. Anyone else who is on the ServiceNow side, are there any questions that you're curious to dig deeper into or you want to drill in and say more live? Feel free.
I think we got a question in the Q&A for indoor mapping. And the question is, does the workplace planning mapping view load the whole campus like the Map Studio view editor does? Because the Map Studio has issues with our large campus. Alex, did you want to take this one?
I think that I will need extra help from David on that one. But for the Map Studio view editor, and the large campus, does it I will need more details. Do you have issues when you first load your CAD files, or is it just the rendering? Because if it is because of the CAD files, I don't know if you saw it, but we have some guides available on community to help you clean your CAD files, because as of today, it's not possible to import an original architectural drawing, let's say, without any modification. You need to like reduce the complexity of your file, getting rid of some details that you won't need on Map Studio, and then upload it through the plugin.
And to elaborate on that, so even right now, while displaying things, we never load the whole campus. We only load one floor at a time. So if there's like multiple buildings in the campus, the user is expected to select the building, select the floor before we can load up the actual CAD file details. And the same behavior is carried over in the space planning view as well. And to Alex's point, the Map Studio issue with the larger campus, or rather the large floor plan, might essentially come down to, just stripping out some extraneous layers to optimize it. And there are some resources that are out there on the community portal around the CAD file cleanup to slim them down for a better, more optimal performance.
Thank you both.
Had, sorry, just to add, we also had additional parsing capabilities in our November release. So if you're not yet using the November release, that might help. And then I know that the product team is currently looking to see how they can continue to fine tune that. But definitely, if you're not on the November release, there should be some improvements there.
Thank you. Absolutely. The only other thing I was going to add, I know the person who asked that question asked it anonymously, and we kind of went through the resources that are available, but if you're still struggling, please feel free to reach out through your account team and make sure that we can have a conversation with you. So feel free to reach through your normal account contacts and we can chat with you further about that. All right, I'm just checking. It looks like we're caught up. We don't have any new questions in the Q&A or the chat at this time. We'll give it another 20 seconds or so, just in case somebody is typing. And if not, we may wrap it up. Oh, yes, and Elizabeth, thank you. We did have a couple of frequently asked questions that we wanted to run through quickly. So if you are typing, maybe this gives you some more time to continue. So one of the questions that we often get has to do with our release mechanism for workplace service delivery. So as Elizabeth kind of shared earlier in the webinar when we were asking what release you're on, you noticed that we're not using the family names like Tokyo or Utah. We're actually using dates, and that's because workplace service delivery releases every quarter via the ServiceNow store, which is really great for our customers and for us because we can push innovation out faster. And with that, we often get questions on what releases are back compatible with family releases. So we have a bit of kind of tips here on what applications rely on what family release, just to help add some clarity. And the other thing that I would point out is that if you ever have a question on this, if you go out to our store, there's actually kind of a description and a write-up for each of our releases on the compatibility and whether it requires a certain family release. So when you're ever in doubt, that's where you can check. And on that note, another question that we frequently get from customers is, you're releasing so frequently, is there any way that I can actually get a notification when a new release is pushed out? And the answer is yes. So when you're logged into the ServiceNow store, there is actually a way for you to kind of go into your profile and modify your notification settings. And so if you're not already receiving those emails, definitely go into your store profile and make sure that you adjust your notification settings to start getting those when we do push out releases. All right, and it looks like we haven't received any more questions from our audience. Thank you everyone for joining. Elizabeth, I'll pass it back over to you for a moment to close us out.
Yes, thanks. I'd like to first thank everyone internally for putting this presentation together and then going over all the new enhancements. I hope everyone that joined is now leaving this session having learned something, feeling inspired to update their plugins to November, and make sure to come back when we have this same session for February and go over those future enhancements. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of the day and happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.